Welcome to Fat Chicks on Top. This podcast contains frank discussions about the body, sexuality, and occasionally uses swear words, which may not be appropriate for people under the age of 18. This podcast also uses facts, statistics, and mathematics, which may not be appropriate for liberal arts majors. And this podcast relies on science and reality, which may not be appropriate for evangelicals. Welcome to Fat Chicks on Top. You're here with your host, Auntie Vice, and it's great to be back. Today, I'm so excited. I get to talk to Dr. Marla Renee Stewart. She's quite brilliant. She's the co-founder of Sex Down South. She created Dickfest in the last 2 years. She's an academic, a researcher, and unlike most of my sex ed people I have on, actually went to school for this. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
It's so great to have you. I followed you for years, so I'm so excited to get to talk to you. So, like I said in the introduction, you actually went to school for this, which is very unusual in this field. What gave you that direction so early in life?
Wow. So, I think, what gave me that direction, I think it's a multitude of factors, right? I think one of those factors was my mother being a sex positive parent without realizing she was a sex positive parent. And that helped me to be more embodied, to be more in my body, to know what it feels like, to know desire, to know all of these things. And then as I got to college, this was like, I love acting, which I'm doing, but I would also love to study human sexuality because that's also very fascinating to me. So I took lots of human sex classes and so ended up getting actually a whole bunch of other things. But needless to say, I studied psychology. And while I was in college, I realized oh my gosh, I'm having a great time, having fun, experimenting. And what I realized is that my girlfriends were just not having orgasms with their partners, right? They were just having sex, but just oh yeah, it's fun, but it's cool or whatever. And I was just what? No, you need to be having orgasms. What are you doing with your life? And so from then on, I was just you know what? I really wanted to help women in particular focus on orgasms. And then as I've grown and as I've evolved, just sort of helping people with their sex lives in general, helping them with the sex skills they need, the communication tactics they need, the seduction techniques they need in order to be successful. So, yeah.
And it's fantastic. You've written some really interesting stuff, starting with your undergraduate thesis, looking at the intersections of gender, race, and sexuality in desire. So what do you find? A lot of your work focuses on Black queer sexuality. What do you find? Is it the same as everybody else? Different? What are kind of your big takeaways from your work you've done in that area?
Well, one of my big takeaways is that we have tended to kind of suppress Black sexuality in particular, or not when I was studying, we've definitely expanded now, but when I was in school 20 years ago, it was not talked about. There weren't a lot of research studies. There weren't a lot of things around Black queerness, kinkiness. There just weren't. And so my goal was really just to get that information out there. When I was an undergrad, I presented at the NIMH in DC at the National Institute of Mental Health. And so what happened was when I was doing my thesis, as I was presenting, I was seeing mentors cover up the eyes of their students. There was so much stigma or scariness of Black queer sexuality. And I was just this is nuts. Well, this is wild. Maybe not nuts, but this is wild. And so I was really kind of, really just, it really, not only did it hurt my feelings, because it's like, why don't you want to learn about this subject? But like, this is me, you know what I mean? And when we do our work, most likely it's because there's some part of us in that research, you know what I mean? That said, I'm happy that I was a catalyst for other Black queer folks, Black sexuality folks, and like, I look on, like Google Scholar, and it's like, you have been cited like 150 times, and it's just like, wow, that's amazing. But just to know that it's really because there has been a limited scope of work. But yeah, like now it's expanding, now it's getting better. And I, continue to put out research studies and participate in that.
So in looking at how the field has expanded, because I went to school probably 10 years before you when I started this. And like the landmark thing at that time was Marlon Rigg's Tongues Untied, the director out of UC. He was at UC Berkeley at the time. Brilliant director on Black men's sexuality, specifically Black gay men. How do Black queer women different from Black men, or is it very similar in that? Because we haven't had a kind of a landmark film on Black lesbian sexuality that just isn't out there right now.
No, so we do actually. There was one that was big, but like I don't know what happened to it. I don't know why people aren't going to it right now. But I remember The Aggressives. I'm not sure if you remember that, but
I haven't. I'm going to have to add that because I haven't seen that. No.
Yeah, so it's like a documentary film about Black lesbian and bisexual queer women, and it's interesting to see because some of those people who participated, like some of them have transitioned, are like now trans men. Some of them, like so, even thinking about, and that's mostly around masculine, right? But we have not seen any like Black lesbian femininity, like we kind of saw them in that film, but like not really featured. So, thinking about like Black queer filmmaking, I mean, Cheryl Denier has done some stuff too. So there's like a little bit, little things about this. Like if you got to search, you know what I mean? You definitely have to search. And also, I think as we see ourselves more on main screen, right, it becomes a little less like, oh, there's Lena Waithe on the red carpet. You know what I mean? So there's probably less of a feeling of needing to be like, where is the Black queer stuff? Because we are seeing it kind of in mainstream now. So yeah, I would have to say I hope that there will be some more done, some more recent stuff done. I did get a chance to participate in a documentary recently, so hopefully that will come out in the next next I don't know year, 2 years, documentaries. Who knows?
So you bring a couple things I want to touch on. One is the identity of aggressives. We've had Renee Amen on the show who identifies as aggressive, and I've had a number of other more butch women. And like from my generation, butch was the identity. Now there's so much more nuance and discussion around non-binary. And non-binary, of course, is now all big news, and they're trying to make pronoun laws and all of these things. How do you interpret the current push for non-binary identities that are not necessarily trans? How are you seeing that develop? And is this something we're going to have in 20 years, or will it continue to evolve?
Well, us, the queers, we just be evolving. You know what I mean? Like, language has shifted so much, and it continues to shift. And even folks who are kind of mainstream gay, right, are still confused on non-binary, right, are still confused on the nuances of like queer, am I queer? I don't know, I'm a lesbian, or queer, I'm gay, or you know what I mean? So there's a lot of work, I would say, that still needs to be done around sort of the evolution of language and identities, and in particular gender variant identities. But here's the thing, what I think it's going to be harder for people to, because non-binary is not only an identity, but it's also like philosophy, right? It's also like the identity queer, right? It's like, it's also political, but it's also sexual, and it's also like all these things. So like, I don't know where it's gonna go, but when people identify as, like, for instance, like identify as, my pronouns are she, her, and my pronouns are they, them, you can use either one of those. I think that it's like a prescription to non-binary, but also prescription to the gender binary. You know what I mean? So it's sort of like and it's of course queering in all of these wonderful, beautiful ways. But, as someone who's also old school, I just want to be like, y'all, everybody queer. It's just like, what kind of queer are you? You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's amazing to me how the language has evolved, because when I started exploring my own gender in college around 18 and 19, they didn't have any of this language. My therapist didn't have any of this language. And now I find when I'm talking to folks in their 20s, they are try to be so precise with the definition. I am a demisexual, pan romantic, blah blah, like crazy levels of specificity. And as somebody who deals with so much around sexual identity and sexual understanding, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Are we somewhere in between?
Oh, I feel like as long as you can find what describes you, I think it's fine. When people ask me about like all of those different identities, I immediately go, you know what? You know who else is good at like knowing all of these identities? Like this other person. Like, I understand that there's a nuance of identities, but because, and I don't know, because my identities are fairly stable, it feels like I don't really know the gamut of all the things, right? I used to be like, but I still kind of identify, right? I'm sort of like, I'm like 90%, liking women, and then like 10% everybody else, right? And then that is how I am. And somebody would be like, oh, okay, well, then you're like maybe pansexual, or you're like, you're bisexual. And I'm like, sure, I'm all those things. I just like to call it queer, period. Because for me, it's also the queering of the language that also means like, well, what does that mean exactly? I'm like, well, I can give you some details, but there's always going to be nuance, and everybody is going to be different. And I think to understand the complexity of humans is to just like radically accept them for who they are, but just get a little deeper. So don't be so shallow in what this identity might mean, So I think that's why I personally think queer is like the perfect term.
Well, I do too, and I have long been a fan of saying we should just go with Q factorial, but that one requires people understand mathematic nomenclature, and two, fucking QAnon fucked that up for me. So but we just all included, y'all. Just deal with it.
Yeah.
So as we've expanded the dialogue around what queerness is, what sexuality is, how have queer spaces changed for you?
Really kind of like we've been talking about, really understanding of identity, right? So like going into queer spaces and actually being like, oh, like it's not only because, back in my day, it was just like femme, stud, or STEM, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you are just one of those, pick one. You could be soft butch, soft stud. You could be, high femme. You could be tomboy femme, whatever. You could be whatever, bi dyke, whatever. Like, there's like so many kind of identities in there, but like, now it's sort of like, well, I'm masculine of center, or I'm femme of center, I'm femme, I'm high femme, I'm what, like, and And then even in those identities, right, of gender, right, we're thinking of, okay, then what is our gender identity, right? So are you woman, man, trans, non-binary, intersex? Like, what is your actual like sex and gender identity, right? And I think that puts just the other layer of like, okay, well, what kind of queer do I desire? And I think that nuance in and of itself is sort of like, how do I figure out who I'm attracted to and where on the gender spectrum, does my desire lie, or does it move? Is it fluid or not, So yeah.
There's a lot to that. And there's a lot more discussion now of people trying to figure out all of their different identities, especially in their 20s. And, before we had so much social media, you could play with your identity and it wasn't announced to the world every 5 minutes, right? So I think it's got to be somewhat harder to explore that now because people see you as unstable when it's just a normal developmental phase.
Mm-hmm.
So in the midst of exploring all of that, and then you have racial politics and you have Democrat and Republican, all this, how do you get through all of that and just get to good sex?
Well, first, I think it's just about inviting like love to be a part of your life, right? And really kind of accepting people and loving people like for who they are. It's really funny to me because people think that like, if I tell someone, like they think they have like, this is love and I only have a little piece of it and I can only tell like 3 people that I love them. And it's like they're hoarding this thing that they could give out to everybody. You know what I mean? Like love is so plentiful. And so my particular vision is just for people to really understand how to approach people with love and how to listen and how to, even if somebody might not, I mean, when I met my wife, she said, oh my God, she tried to tell me what feminism was, which was like some definition she had got from like Fox News. And right, and we're talking about, stud, lesbian, like, and was just like feminism, like that's not. And I was like, I don't think you know what feminism is. And it was funny to me because she was trying to tell me what feminism was. And I was like, I teach a feminist theory class at a university. There's no way in hell on this earth that you would know more about feminism than I do. And so I really had to just be like, this is what it is, which has totally changed her perspective because she was like, oh my God, like, what have I been think like, I'm like, well, if you don't know, you don't know. And then like you go on and pass on this raggedy ass information, like that is social media, right? People aren't passing on the best information, right? So how do they get to the love, right? Well, approaching with love. Like I said, I wouldn't have, married her if that wouldn't have happened. Right. But I'm happy that, we were able to sort of get past that. So I would say being able to listen, being able to know you are on the same path as someone, or that your desires are aligning. You know what I mean? It could be something casual. Something casual just means, hey, are our desires aligning? And if they are, great. If not, hey, we got to move on. So yeah, I don't know.
There's a lot more conversation within feminist communities, within women's communities, especially queer women, around sexuality, pleasure, and all of that. And you went and did something totally different. You founded Dickfest. So let's talk about which when I first, I'm like, really? Marla did Dickfest? When I saw it. So let's talk about Dickfest.
Oh my gosh, you and a ton of others, right? We're just like, wait, what? But I was just like, you know what? I know all of these wonderful presenters, all of these amazing educators, and like we all do something different around dick. Like we need, like it needs to happen. Like I literally just woke up one day and was just like, Dick Fest. Like this idea needs to happen. And so, I think I got like the first Dick Fest, I think had like 12 presenters talking about 12 different things about Nick. And so it was awesome. It was really, really amazing. But you never realize how much nuance there are to genitals until you have 12 different educators talking about 12 different things,
Yeah.
So it was great.
And are you going forward with another Dick Fest?
So we just finished Dick Fest at the beginning of February. So for this year. And that one was kind of the second iteration. And so we had 10 presenters, and it was really nice because I did a workshop on, dicks on drugs, or, there were, thinking about size and all of these things. So yeah, I'm thinking about like the next iteration of that is going to be Booty Fest in
Nice.
August, for anal August.
Nice.
So
that's perfect.
yeah.
So you're probably similar to me. When you go to these conferences and stuff, you do walk away with stuff you haven't thought about for new information. So 2 rounds of Dick Fest. How have you changed your thinking about dicks in general?
I don't know if I've changed my thoughts about dicks in general, but but what I did learn is that there is a lot of nuance, and that there is a lot of, amazing presenters out there. I learned that even though we could be teaching the same thing, people teach it very differently. So absorbing the information is different. So I just encourage people to like, not only, to expand their sort of world around that. Yeah. And I did Clitfest too, and that was also amazing, and Clitfest was, yeah, amazing. Yeah, like I said, there's so many things that you could talk about when it comes to genitals. So yeah.
And then you're a co-founder of Sex Down South, which is one of the most prestigious sex conferences in the country. Happens annually for our listeners who don't know. You want to talk a little bit about what goes on at Sex Down South? Because in the sex educator community, it's a huge thing, but not all my listeners are part of that community.
Yeah, absolutely. So surprisingly, even though there's lots of educators, of course, who know about it because they're like, oh, I want to present, we attract a lot of what we call enthusiasts, which are people who just want to make their sex lives better. Like if you want to make your sex life better, then you should come to this conference, right? Because we have about, 10 to 12 workshops that are happening at a time. So it's very busy, but it's all about learning. We have, some sessions have live demos. Some sessions have, we really just make it fun, and it was born out of love. So people come there with a nice, lovely, sex positive attitude and just like ready. It's like a family reunion, So yeah, when you walk in, you'll find the registration table where you have to sign, the forms, all the forms, get your thing, come in. And we are behind like a curtain. So we really wanted it to be private. We didn't want the hotel staff to be there. We're like, if you want to get nude, you can get nude. If you want to do this, you can do that. So we offer that to our enthusiasts. We have vendors so people can see all the kind of products and games and things that people have to offer. Again, the education portion, the workshops. We also have a healing space. So that is for where our healers who come in and do body work on people, or may do a reading, or there's a cuddle space if you just want to cuddle or take a nap or whatever, right? So there's options for that. And then we also have a dungeon, because, I'm kinky and my friends are kinky. So, so we have a wonderful dungeon, and that's also really amazing. We have, so even though we all learn during the day, we just like have fun and party at night. So we have some shows. Thursday night, we call the Little Bang, which is like a nice little erotic show. And then Friday, we have a mix and mingle where people can go outside of the hotel and go to the bar, hang out, eat, whatever, socialize. And then we kind of like leave it like you can do this or do whatever, hang out, go to the city, go and explore Atlanta. And then Saturday we have the Big Bang, which is basically like our closing party. So we have performers and a dance party afterwards. So pretty fun.
And for folks who haven't checked it out, you really should. It's amazing. And what you say is like family coming home, and the best is like the Wednesday and Thursday of the event, the week of the event. On Twitter, all the sex educators like, "Oh my God, I'm at the airport. I'm going down here." Like you can see everybody just getting so thrilled to go.
Yes.
It's super cute. It's super cute. You bring up being kinky, and since you work in erotic space and around all the kind of academic stuff, one of the conversations that's come up in the last couple of years is around the term master and slave. Right? These are terms that are instilled in our community. They represent a type of relationship, and there's a lot of conversation about whether or not this is still okay, if it's still too rooted in chattel slavery. From your experience, how are you with those terms, and would you supplement them, or do they still have meaning for you?
It's funny to talk about this because, like, you know, at the beginning of my kink journey 22 years ago, like I was just like, okay, this is just a part of the fabric of the system, right? Of this lifestyle. And as I've seen it evolve, it's been interesting because being at Sex Down South, you know, you'll have someone with a name tag, maybe someone white, right, with master or whatever. And then you have a bunch of Black people that are going, I am not calling you master or whatever, you know what I mean? And so it also highlights the conversation around honorifics, right? For me personally, I think it is a part of the taboo. I do see there are people who do get, you know, activated from it, right? Who might be like, you know what, it brings me back to all of like, it brings me in a bad place. So maybe they've moved to owner property, right? So I've seen a lot of that master slave transition into owner property to be a little less activating for people. And I'm just all for like, whatever makes you feel good. You know what I mean? Because I mean, I can't deny a Black person their desires, you know, if they like want to be a slave or they want to be a master or they want to be like, do you know, kink is taboo in the first place. So do what you desire. I just think be thoughtful in your desires and what that means for you, and make sure you are clear as to why you maybe prefer or don't prefer it or whatever. But I'm all, like I said, I come out of love. So do what makes you happy.
So it's been one of the fascinating things I've had having that conversation for the last several years, especially since when Sinclair Sexsmith was the title holder. They started this conversation kind of using their platform for it to see how white kinksters respond to it versus Black kinksters. And almost every Black kinky person I've had on the show is like, you do you, I'm going to do me. And I'm okay with it. Whereas white kinky people tend to be very strict in how they approach that. And I think that's just one of the signs that there's so much pressure on the language that we're looking at. Like I was geeking out on in grad school and, you know, semiotics and the structure of language and reclaiming negative terms and all of that it's moved into a much more general space. And we see now lawmakers are desperate to try and control that language by book bans, by pronoun bans, and all of that. Do you see those as kind of the last gasp of a dying patriarchy, or are you on the team of, well, no, it's going to get a lot better before it gets worse?
I think it is a last gasp of the patriarchy. I do. I mean, but we see the transition, even like you said, outside, right? When you go and want to rent a house or buy a house, you know, it's not the master bedroom anymore, right? It's the in-suite, right? It's you know, so we are seeing this language but it's also a denial of like how slavery was so ingrained into our society. So some of it is like, do we want to erase that? It's like the damn history books who are like, yeah, the Africans came over to the United States. Like, what? No, that didn't, no, like it was slavery. They were forced, right? So like even thinking about how history or the US in general is so ashamed of of slavery, right? That they're trying to like do their best to like erase it in any way, shape, or form, which also includes the master slave language, in general. So I find it interesting too, because I feel like, I mean, Sinclair is head on about the, you see white people being like, nope, can't do it, won't do it, whatever. And then black people are like, do you? You know what I mean? Like, we know that shit exists. It's not going, like, it's not, it's going to be there. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's just been fascinating for me to watch because it's something that I've been very aware of for a long time, in part because I've had a couple of dominants who were also raised by Black Panthers, so it's always been part of that discussion and negotiation, right? Which is very different than a lot of white kinky people have. But yeah, in the last couple of years, it's been very strange to watch the evolution and on a FetLife, right? Which has all the pros and cons of Facebook because it's a mass social media site. I know one of the big fat chick's favorites is Dirty Lola, and she's written a lot about racism on FetLife. Have you spent much time on it? And if so, what's your experience been on Fet?
Number one, no, I don't spend that much time on FetLife except for to advertise my events or to maybe find other local events that, like, when I first moved to Florida, I was like, oh, I need to see like what's happening in the scene down here. So other than that, I when I tell people, I was like, it's a tool to like find the people in person, like to find the munches, to find the dungeons, to find the play parties. I would say use it for that. If you're going to go on there to try to find hookups, I'm not a huge fan of going that route. But what's cool that happened out of that situation is there was a lot more heightened awareness around the racism on FetLife. And so Luna and I formed the Race and Kink discussion series to really highlight, hey, we encounter racism all the time in kink. What does it look like? How do our race and how does kink and the kink that we do, like how do the intersections of all of our identities affect how we go into these play spaces, how we play with partners, how we interact with white people in and out of the dungeon, So I think that has been really an amazing and fruitful conversation around those sort of the happenings and experiences of BIPOC folks. So yeah, like you said, I don't go on there except for maybe to find things, but I don't go on there to try to, I've gotten messages that were like, I want you to be my, African, Black femdom, like, let me be your sub. And, because people are trying to waste my time, I don't know. I usually simply just say like, okay, your deposit is $1,000 if you want me to be something like that. And usually they go away. So I'm just,
the messages that people like, I know they don't read any part of my profile because I constantly get hit up to be a dominant or a key holder. I'm very explicitly a submissive. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, y'all aren't getting this. Like, I can teach from both sides, but this is not what I'm interested in at all.
Right. So, yeah, people don't. People really don't. I don't care.
No. Another thing that's changed since you started doing your work is this is now all academic conversation. You can have subspecialties in BDSM and alternative sexualities, and you teach at university. What are the 20-somethings like? Because I have very little contact with 20-somethings on purpose. You choose to engage them. How are they coming in and approaching sexuality and all the studies?
Well, they've gotten, as far as approaching sexuality, they've been a lot better. Academically, a lot worse, but like because I think because there's so much queerness in the media now, it's normal. It's been normalized, and even though I'm in the South, like even being in the South, it's kind of like it's still very Jesus-y and still very like, well, God, this or God that. And I straight up on the syllabus am like, God is not, the Bible cannot be used as a justification for anything. You need to have some facts. You need to have some research. You need to have something that backs it up. And so what I found is that social media, the media in general, has a huge effect on young people. And they see, like, I'm reading these papers and they're like, I see where my depression and anxiety is coming from because I'm comparing myself to all of these people. Or I was trying to find out who I am as a sexual person. I teach a gender and sexuality course. So it's like, how do I like, oh, I didn't know like about like what this means to be a virgin, or just thinking about their sexuality. They are really thoughtful, I would say, more about their sexuality than I've seen in my years from the, since 2015 to now. Like, I've definitely seen sort of the change there. I definitely see them making decisions for themselves, and rather than hanging on to sort of their maybe parents' ideals. So I see that more and more. But overall, I think they're doing really well. Like lately, I think over the past couple of years, they are like, I know what my desires are, or I know like who I'm attracted to. So it's been beautiful.
Well, that's cool. That's actually so cool. Yeah, about the only touch point I have with college age kids is I will go out and I give lectures to fraternities on like how to date properly and stuff. But I mean, it's not that interaction, and it sounds like they're much more thoughtful about it, which is very cool. And you've mentioned several times the media and representation. Where do you find the best representation of sexuality and relationships? Because you can't totally divorce the two.
Oh gosh, that is a hard question. Like successful relationship?
Yeah, like how you would say this is a semi-healthy model of sexuality or a relationship, or a good representation of queer sexuality.
Oh my gosh, you were gonna have to come back to me on that one. I think I asked my class the same thing. And where have I seen healthy? Because I mean, media, I'm thinking of like mainstream media is all about drama, right? So you have to create drama. So Modern Family, but Black queerness, maybe Pose.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
You watching Harlem?
Oh yeah, I love Harlem, but I don't know if that's a good representation.
I don't know if Ty is good representation, but in terms of drama, I'm sorry, I'm in love with Ty. I watch it just for her.
Right. Yeah, it's sort of like, oh, what about the Aziz Ansari show, the one where Lena Waithe second season?
Master of None. Yes.
Yeah, Master of None. Yeah, I think the second season.
She's great in that.
Had some good reflection on Black queer sexuality. I haven't seen anything like really with like men. I feel like that's even more like harder to come by. Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, it's one of the things I use the show for is to find new things to read and watch too. And I love seeing where people are being drawn to. But yeah, when it comes to Black male sexuality, it's crap.
I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Unless it's a reality show, because sometimes I think reality shows might have some representation there, but shows aren't that great.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a whole thing there.
But maybe that's why
That's a
there's a
whole.
need for intimacy coordination, right? And coordinators and
Mhm.
educators are getting into that to help mainstream TV get their shit together.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's when you don't have those models and you haven't had them in your personal life, it can be very difficult to figure out how to build a healthy relationship going forward. And even
Mhm.
though we have a lot more awareness around sexuality and desire, how to build healthy, intimate relationships that are stable, I see a lot less of that across the board in terms of coaching, educating, teaching, research. Like sex is a little more interesting, a
Mhm.
little more succinct, but yeah, there's a lot less in terms of intimacy
Yeah.
when it comes to that. Okay,
Yeah. Set it off. That wasn't very healthy. Wasn't very healthy
no,
relationship.
no, but good movie. Good. It's funny. I had Clarkeisha Kent. She was on a couple weeks ago, and she writes. She's a cultural critic. She has a new book coming out.
Ooh,
But when she was talking about great Black movies, that was the top of her list. Was that you needed? Everybody needs to watch Set It Off.
absolutely.
Yeah. If our listeners want to find you, if they want to read your work, if they want to go to one of your amazing events, plug all the things.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to velvetlipssexed.com. And that is for like if you want to learn more things about yourself sexually, that is just around my coaching and workshop business. If you are interested in getting more involved around like race and kink stuff, you can go to raceandkink.com, and that's our discussion series. So we have, and we also have Kinky Tapas from there too, which is sort of a kink event for kind of newbies wanting to dip and dabble and try different things. And Race and Kink happens every month. So it's a monthly discussion series, the last Tuesday of each month. And then what else? So Sex Down South. So make sure you go to sexdownsouth.com. And our event is in September. We've expanded. We just finished Sex by Southwest in Tucson. We're expanding to different cities. So make sure you get onto our email list and see if we are doing a little day conference in your city or near somewhere where you live. And what else? What else? What else? Oh, I hope I'm not forgetting anything. Kinky Tapas, Racing King, Velvet Lips, Sex Down South. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I'm probably forgetting something because there's a lot of things that I do. But oh, and if you sign up for my website, I am working on a program membership. So if you're interested in learning more about your sex life, or you're interested in being successful as a person who is in this sexuality industry, hit me up.
Listeners, definitely hit her up. Check out all of her sites. I've been following Marla for years. She's a great follow. She's fascinating. She has a lot of really cool stuff to say. And thank you for being on the show. This has been wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And also, people can follow me at Velvet Lips Sex Ed, sex without the E, on social media, as well as the number one, Marla Stewart, on all social platforms.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. And listeners, please read, or recommend, and subscribe. Do the things. Thank you so much. Hey, welcome back to Say Hi to the Vibe. You're here with Auntie Vice. And today we're really lucky. We have Gigi. She's a young trans woman in her early 20s. And we're going to talk about a little bit about finding the right toys. So, Gigi, what have you been looking for in a sex toy?
Really, for me, it's what I've been looking for is like not like a replication of more like I guess the best way to put it is just like stuff that vibrates pretty much or like I don't know how you would describe that or how that falls under like sensation wise, but I would say like the vibe, like something where I like a kind of, yeah, it kind of helps, you know.
And have you had much experience with toys in the past?
So kind of a funny thing is I never up until recently ever had like any form of sex toy whatsoever. It was not from lack of interest. It was probably just like, hey, I like wouldn't cross my mind 24/7, or yeah, price wise is another one. But
Yeah, they can be kind of expensive.
absolutely, and that's why. And like for me, because I work at I work like a bare minimum job. It's not like it's not a necessity, so it's not something I'm just gonna be rushing out to grab like a new one of. So
Hmm.
when you got me the one toy, I was like, thrilled. I was like, awesome.
So if you're looking for vibrations, do you like intense, less intense type of sensation when you're masturbating and playing with people?
For me personally, I would say intense. I like when it like
Intense.
really, really like really just like full power, full throttle, that kind of thing.
And what this is marked for an 18 or older channel, so you can be explicit.
Fair enough. Fair.
What what body parts are you looking to most stimulate with a vibration toy?
I think for me, I mean, the obvious one would be like genitalia for me,
Hmm.
like the penis, something like that. But another one is because you mentioned that I am a trans girl. I've been on. I'm actually approaching, I think, 4 months now on HRT.
Excellent.
And one of the things that it causes is it makes like your like nipples like really, really like sensitive.
Hmm.
And like I remember when it first happened, it was just like kind of you're not used to it. And I was
Yeah.
just like, hey, I hope so. I had to like talk to friends. I'm like, this is okay. And they're like, no, 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 that's all okay. I'm like, perfect. All I need to know. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll take like the vibrator and just like put it on there, maybe while like I'm
Hmm.
masturbating or something. And that
Hmm.
really is incredible.
Great. So I think we're gonna go with the Fliver wand. It's
Mhm.
a chargeable wand. You don't have to plug it into the wall, but it has for a battery powered wand. It has a pretty intense sensation on the higher end,
Okay.
and it's fairly affordable. This one is
Sweet.
through bestvibe.com. So we're gonna
Okay.
get you that, and then come back and see how it went.
Yeah. That sounds awesome.
You got to try the wand. What did you think?
The one was great. Like it really is what I'm looking for, like really ideal. Because I remember when I first got it, I was like trying to, figure out how to use it. It's very basic, one button, easy to charge, that kind of thing. And it's one of those things where you don't have to be like charging it 24/7. I know I would keep it like next to my bed, and I
Hmm.
would just forget about it. And let's say maybe I have a, friend of sorts over, and you just casually remember, because that is something that happened to me. I had a friend of mine over, and they asked me, they're like, hey, do you have any like toys whatsoever? And normally I would, say like, oh no, but then I like like light bulb, I was like, yes, I do actually. And so we did that, and that just kind of added to the fun, the pleasure.
And it does work for the nipples as well.
Definitely, definitely. Like I said, I really go like I like to go like pretty intense with it. That's
Hmm.
just me though. So I will. So what I'll do is just like well, I build up to it,
Hmm.
because it really is just that sensation is just wow, wow. Like it's pretty incredible. I remember like when I first got it, I thought it only had like the one setting.
Hmm.
And that was
Hmm.
not even an issue. Like that wasn't even an issue for me. I was like, the fact that I had anything, I was grateful. But when I'm like just messing around with it to see like how it
Hmm.
like all it works and everything, I realized that you can make it more intense. And I was like I struck gold almost. Just it was like really, really, really helpful. And so I just like would do that plus, different rhythms, different like it just like anything you want, like really just you can go crazy, experiment, you name it, like really, really good.
I am so glad that worked for you. We're going to
Definitely.
have you back to talk about a different toy on another episode, but thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Anytime.
And now, a moment of gratitude.
Oh my gosh, I am so grateful for the family and friends and support that I have. I'm so grateful for my communities. I'm grateful for everybody who, has just been so supportive of me and my endeavors. And even though they're, just like you looking at me sideways, like Marla and Dickfest, right? They still come out and support it. They're like, yes, actually, yes, I will be a part of this. So, I'm grateful for my business partner, Tia, for Sex Down South. I'm, grateful for my mother, my wife, my baby who helps me smile, keeps me grounded. And I'm just, I'm grateful for all the things. Yeah.
Texas of the world. Thank you for listening to this episode of Fat Chicks on Top. Please like, subscribe, and review our podcast on whatever platform you listen to it on. If we like your review, we may even read it online. This has been an Auntie Vice production. Producer and host, Rebecca Blanton. Audio production by Sharon Smith. Music by David Manga. And more music by Sharon Smith. For more information about Fat Chicks on Top, please visit our website for all things Fat Chicks at fatchicksontop.com.